Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Covert Stuttering workshop of the Spring NSA Mini Conference. I hope you guys have been enjoying all of the workshops that you've been to. My name is Cathy Olish Maciejewski. I'm from Grosse-Ile, Michigan. I've been a member of the NSA for 21 years. I've been to 19 conferences and served on the board of directors and very involved with our local chapter as well. I'm going to moderate. Before we hear our panelists, I just wanted to touch quickly on what covert stuttering is. That was not an example. It's usually when the person's able to hide that they are disfluent, they can get by. They can, someone may not know because of the techniques they use, like they may say a lot or they pause, or they don't remember what they're gonna say. They change words around. Rather than say, Bob said hi, someone might say, I saw Bob, he said hi. So there's ways to get around that. And I've been that way my whole life, except with the NSA. NSA has taught me to be more open. But the difference between being overt and covert is we can get away with it. So you can say, I'm not gonna talk and I'm hiding. Well, you're not really hiding. When you're truly able to pass as fluent, you're saying and you're doing the things that you want to, but you're bouncing around deciding what you want to say and how you want to say it. So I'm excited to present and have on board our three panelists of the day, Elaine, Bob, and Will, and they're each going to share their journey. And at the end, we'll do some Q&A. So if you have anything that you like to ask as we're going along, go ahead and type it in the chat. And with that, let's begin with Elaine.
Thank you, Cathy. I appreciate that. It's good to be here. My name is Elaine Robin Croyd. I always like to say that because no one knows how to say it. Croyd. And it's fun to see so many people I know, although it's weird to do this on Zoom. I haven't done a conference for NSA since I was at NSA, so this is interesting, but hi everyone. I have been given 10 minutes to share my story, so I have to I'm gonna kind of hit the highlights because I feel like my journey has been a long one and it continues to be. So I will try to share the important highlights with you. It's important for me to say too that I am a person who stutters. I'm also a speech language pathologist. I live in the Seattle, Tacoma area. I have lived around the world and that's part of my journey, but I do currently live in Tacoma, Washington. I have been very involved in the stuttering community as well. I don't need to go into all of that, but yes, I have been chapter leader and I've been involved nationally and internationally. So my journey starts as a young child who stutters. When I was growing up, the Wendell Johnson theory of not talking about it, not diagnosing it, and she'll outgrow it was very big. So my mom took me to the pediatrician. He told her not to talk to me about it. So my whole life, well, my whole childhood, until my 20s, my parents never talked to me about my stuttering. So they never said anything bad or good about it. It was just never discussed in my house. So that kind of message for me was that there was something so bad about stuttering that my parents couldn't even talk about it. I did not understand their perspective that they were told not to. My perspective is I was stuttering and getting stuck on words, and no one was saying anything about it. No one was supporting me. Oh, wow. And there's still some trauma there. So no one was supporting me and no one was helping me through those struggles. So there was a lot of shame about stuttering when I was growing up. To me, stuttering was bad. That's how I saw it my whole childhood. So I did everything I could not to stutter because stuttering was bad. So I didn't want to do anything that was bad. I wanted the praise. I wanted to be like everybody else. So I did everything I could to be as fluent as I could. And now we call that covert stuttering because on the inside I was struggling. On the outside, I was pretty fluent. But like Cathy said, I changed words. I rearranged my sentences. I often just wouldn't talk. So I was seen as a child, I was seen as very shy because I just didn't want to stutter. So that fear of stuttering was really, it was really big, and that fear really drove who I was and the decisions that I made. So I never had therapy as a kid. And I'm not exactly sure why. My mom passed away before I came to terms with this and was able to talk about it. So I don't really know all the understanding of why I didn't have therapy, but I have to assume I was so covert that people didn't really see it as a problem. And there was not a speech therapist at my school, as I work at a school now and know that there are speech language pathologists at schools. But okay, I lost track. I have to stop looking at the chat, sorry. So I had no therapy, and the decisions really drove me, or the stuttering really drove my decisions, sorry. Or the fear of stuttering. So I didn't do the things I wanted to do, and I very much was not my authentic self. I can remember my early 20s, I didn't even know who I was. So at some point in my 20s, I couldn't live like that anymore. I needed help. I didn't have the words to talk about it. I didn't have the tools. I didn't even know. Yeah, I had no idea how to talk about it. I had never talked about it. I mentioned it to my husband at that time. I did get married, and he's like, "Oh, I don't care that you stutter." And my thing was, I stuttered. Don't ever talk to me about it. Like it came up, but it was like, "Don't talk to me. I am so ashamed of it." Not that I said that, but that's what I was thinking. But in my 20s, I just couldn't live like that. It was just, it had such an effect on who I was, trying to hide it. So I did find the stuttering support groups in Seattle. I held on to that information for a few years. To me, being covert and wanting to do something about it, it took so much courage for me to step out of that denial and that fear and to actually put it out there a little tiny bit. So I held on it for a few years. I finally just couldn't take it anymore. And I made that phone call and that whole that whole situation is a story in itself, but I feel like I'm not going to have enough time. But I made a phone call to the chapter leader at the time, and then I went to the chapter meeting. And that was so uncomfortable, as anyone who is covert, who for the first time hears other people who stutter. It was very painful. And not that their stuttering was painful, but it was my vision of my own stuttering. Like I was looking in a mirror, and it was really difficult for me. So I went to the stuttering support groups. I started to face my stuttering a little bit. I started to see others and kind of sit with their stuttering a little bit and realize that it is okay. But seeing that they were okay with stuttering, like I had no idea. I'd never met anyone who stuttered my whole childhood. The only experience I had with stuttering was in the movies, and people laughing at, like the comedic stuttering in the movies, and people made fun of it and laughed at it. So, I mean, I really had no experience with just real people stuttering. And I wanted that. I saw that people were okay with their stuttering, and I was like, so not okay. But I made a decision at that time that I was going to get there. I wanted that. I worked so hard to get there. And I can tell you, it was not an easy journey for me. And I can only speak for me, but I am a speech pathologist, so I know for other people, it's not an easy journey either. But for me, it was not an easy journey. And, but I went to therapy. I became great friends with people who stutter and really kind of saw their journey, talked about it. I began to gain the words of how to talk about it. I mean, that was a big thing for me. I just couldn't sit and have a conversation, certainly not about my own stuttering. So the therapy helped with me learning about what I was doing. And so in that, I decided to go back to grad school or go to grad school and become a speech pathologist. I was learning more and more about stuttering. I was sitting with my stuttering, but there was still so much more I wanted. I wasn't getting to the depth of what I needed. And so I thought, I'm going to learn more about stuttering. And I went to grad school so I can learn all there was to learn about stuttering. Of course, I think I knew a lot more about stuttering than many of the people at grad school, but I learned a lot in grad school as well. So and part of what I learned, and I think if you haven't been to any of the, and I know I only have a few more minutes, Cathy, but if you haven't been to any of the other research or the workshops at this NSA conference, I sat in yesterday and listened to Dr. Bird talk about the things that can help you when you want to open up about your stuttering. And there's been research in it. Like I've been doing this for a long time, but she and her team have been doing research on self-disclosure, being able to talk about it. And I know it made the difference to me, but there's actually research to talk about that, how helpful self-disclosure is, and self-compassion, and accepting the stuttering. I feel, okay, I'm just gonna say, so when I started to open up a little bit, I talked to my dad about my stuttering, and it's kind of a big thing. And I know people have said this, like, be in your 20s, you've already lived so many years hiding your stuttering. How do you then open up, right? How do you then let the people in your life know you stutter? And so that was quite a journey. And talking to my dad, it was a huge thing. I think it's still on the internet or something if you Google my name or my old married name. But I think the conversation I had with my dad, it was, he thought and it was a good conversation. I was very nervous and he was very sweet actually, but he's like, yeah, I remember you used to stutter when you were nervous, but you don't do it anymore. That was his response. So I had hit it so well. He really never even knew it was a problem. But he then realized, I mean, I was really able to talk to him about it, open up even more. It was the family stuff that I felt that was holding me back. So I kind of let go of some of that. Even talking to my children about it for years, I had never said it to them, but they were like, yeah, so what? You know, like for me, it was such a big deal. But to many people around me, it was not. And that's fine. But for me, it was getting it out and not hanging on to it. So, but I know that the other thing too about, are you moving me along, Cathy, or no? Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay.
This is good.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, no, of course okay. So no, I did lose what I was going to say, but it's okay. So and I have some notes about my own story, which is funny, but you know, I'm trying to make some points, but that as I started to self-disclose and just tell people I stuttered and really put it out there and maybe even stutter on purpose a little bit to be sure people remembered that I stuttered. It is very counterintuitive when I talk to people who stutter, when I'm working with people who stutter. It's like, I want to stop stuttering. Why would I stutter on purpose? Why would I tell people I stutter? I mean, how is that helping me? I want to be covert. I want to be fluent. But for me, that was not the answer. So I had to work through my stuff, and I had to bring out all that stuff I was holding and not being authentic. So putting my stuttering out there really did make that difference. And I can say as a speech pathologist, although I think this may come up in the questions, but I really meet people where they're at. I don't put my story on other people. We all have our own stories, and we all have different goals for what we want. And so I don't necessarily bring people on my journey. They may have a different way of approaching their goals. So, and I really look at it, and I think Dr. Bird brought this up yesterday, but I really liked it, that and I see speech pathologists have fluency as the goal all the time, but if fluency is the goal, then I'm going to be covert because I stutter and I can't stop stuttering, and it is part of my neurology. And so if you're going to tell me I need to be fluent, then I'm going to be covert. So I have to remind myself sometimes, but acceptance of my own stuttering, and that fluency is never my goal. But I can say I am on a journey. And so I can't say I'm fully recovered and I never stutter, right? I am a person who stutters. And so I just really kind of working on being that authentic self. To me, that is so important to me. And the last thing I just want to say, my whole life, it's kind of corny, but it is really true. My whole life, I really wanted acceptance from others. I wanted people to be, I didn't want to have to change who I was. I wanted acceptance from others. But through the NSA and my friends who stutter and my own therapy, my own work, my own being with my stutter, I have found that acceptance in me. I'm okay with my stutter. If you're not, then that is an issue you have to work on. But I am okay with my stuttering. So, and with that, I will stop talking, but thank you for letting me share a quick snippet of my journey. Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine. And even though I know your journey really well, every time I hear each of my stuttering friends talk, I learn something new, and you're making me tear up over here. So thank you for sharing so openly. Next, let's go to Bob Wellington. Take it away, Bob.
Mute, don't I? Do I have to be, can I remain on mute? Will it work with you guys if I keep on mute?
That's a covert technique, so not today, not here and now.
So can I fake being on mute? Just move my lips pretending I'm speaking?
Yeah, a lot of us have done that, haven't we?
Yeah. This is a pseudo mute. That's what I'm doing, pseudo mute. I'm pretending I'm on mute. Okay, so I'm going to pretend I'm on mute and none of you are going to listen to a word I say. So, hey, I'm Bob Wellington. I am coming in from actually Columbiana, Ohio. I am up here and I'm going back to Florida tomorrow, but I am here temporarily this weekend. I am a person that stutters, and I did not enter the community until about 14 years ago. I wanted nothing to do with anything that had anything to do with stuttering. Even though I had about 30 years of formal therapy, that didn't work because I resisted everything because deep inside, I knew there was something more than people telling me how they thought I should live my life. But this is really interesting, Covert, and thank you so much, Cathy. Covert, this whole thing about fear, about I need to hide things in my life because I'm afraid what people will think. I've heard this wonderful quote. I can't remember the author, but they said that fear is not something that we should hide from. Fear is there to show us that we need to pursue whatever it is we're afraid of, because therein lies the secret to who we are. And I love that quote. So I went out a few years ago and I made up this hat because I was so afraid that people would find out that I stutter, and I hated it. I hated it in my life. So I decided to wear this hat, and I don't wear it as much now, but there for a few years, I wore it everywhere. I wore it to the conference. The only time at the conference I was not allowed to wear this hat when the board of directors were taking a photograph, and Tammy told me to take my hat off. So she did not allow me to wear this hat. But I'm a karaoke freak, and I wear my hat when I go sing karaoke. I wear it wherever I go. And because I was so afraid that people would find out that I stutter. I love what Brene Brown talks about courage and about vulnerability, and how these are the secret tools so that no one really talks about, that she certainly talks about, that you have to become vulnerable. You have to take a risk because only there do you find courage. So my journey for the last 14 years when I joined the community was to, find these things in life that terrified me and figure out a way to do them. I remember about maybe my first conference was 2007. And the person that I roomed with was from Vietnam. And he encouraged me to go to Toastmasters. Well, I knew about Toastmasters. I had no desire to go to Toastmasters. But I knew that if I was going to continue this journey to become who I really am, I had to go to Toastmasters. And I remember that night when I put my hand on the door to open the door to go into Toastmasters, knowing exactly what would happen. that the one thing I was running away from my entire life was going into a situation where I had to talk. And I knew they were going to ask me my name. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to say it. And I remember how frozen I was, reaching for that handle to go into that meeting. And the thing about Toastmasters that I learned the first time I went, and that's 14 years ago, was that they not only talk very well, but they get up in front of everybody to show off how well they talk. And it was terrifying, but still, it was a fear, and like all the fears, and I continue to approach these fears, and I'm finding out that as I approach the fears and I go through them, and I'm scared, and I'm afraid what people are going to think, and I'm afraid what the outcome's going to be. But even though I go through them, I am finding out a little bit more about who I am. And certainly being a person that stutters is certainly who I am. And I think my journey going forward in everything I do is to find out more about, who this person is, who this person is that stutters, and what is it that, I was the 1%, part of that 1% of population, that stutters. I want to figure out what that means, what it means to me in my daily life. So that's my challenge of going forward. I'm not only afraid to talk because I'm going to stutter. I have an incredible amount of fears that show up every day. And I truly believe that as I approach these fears, and even though I would rather hide them, I would rather be covert, as I approach these fears, I find out a little bit more about who it is that would be this person, Bob Wellington, and who it is to be this person that stutters. And I'm hoping one day I'm going to kind of like who that person is, but I'm on my journey, and here I am. Thank you, Cathy.
Thank you, Bob. And just wearing that hat alone is a big deal, because many people who hide would never wear that. So you're already on the right path. So thank you so much for sharing. And now I'm excited to hear Will's journey. You ready, Will?
I'm ready. Thanks for having me. My first time doing something like this, so I'm excited to do it. My name's Will Nading. I live in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama originally, and I'm married. I've got two little girls that are 7 and 5 years old. Both of them show some signs of some speech language issues. The younger of the two, I think, at least right now, stutters to some degree, but that's a topic for another group discussion. But my own journey, I guess, I've always stuttered for as long as I can remember. I can recall at whatever young age it would have first come up, my parents talking to me about it, and going to, I guess, what was then a specialist. It was at the University of Alabama when this would have been in the 80s. But I can remember a very distinct comment when I was sitting in the chair in the office of whoever we were talking to, I was talking to my mom or my dad, whoever I was there with. And I distinctly remember them saying to my parents that, you know, they could expect me to snap out of it by the time I grew up. And that, for whatever reason, that's stuck in my head. And I found myself, you know, as a kid and as a teenager, you know, as an adolescent, kind of just waiting, you know, okay, one day I'll wake up and, you know, this will all be over. That didn't happen, obviously. But so I did speech therapy in the school system from kindergarten through 6th grade, which, like Elaine was talking about, was a lot of fluency, goal-oriented type stuff. And I remember in the school system I was in, after 6th grade was the last grade of the elementary school, and then you changed schools. And I remember telling my parents at that time that I was tired of speech therapy, and it was frustrating. I didn't want to do it anymore, so I never went back. That was the last speech therapy I had. Aside from a conversation like that, and maybe one or two others, stuttering was never something that was discussed with my parents or my siblings or friends or anything like that. And, you know, I continued for high school, college, everything else to basically pretend like it wasn't there, you know, quote unquote, be covert, although at times it, you know, was certainly there. A lot of, you know, the experience that probably a lot of people in this room have of, you know, pretty uncomfortable presentations in school and things like that. You know, obviously, as I got older, you know, my stuttering stuck with me pretty well. And in college, I remember a lot of classes of, you know, feeling really humiliated when I had to read something out loud and I couldn't make it happen, and things like that. I never knew the idea of what a covert stutterer was. I'd never met another person who stuttered till I was in my late 20s. So through all that time, I just kind of dealt with it and avoided a lot. When I was in college, I consciously tried to pick classes and stuff to minimize the amount of talking. I would read course descriptions and I would rule things out because, you know, if in the course description there was something about, you know, a presentation or something, I wouldn't sign up. And it led me, you know, to get into a professional career that I didn't like. My first job as out of college as a young adult, I avoided the phone like the plague. I can remember being assigned tasks to call people, and I would stare at the list of names and numbers and just, I didn't do a very good job. I called people, but I let my stutter get the best of me. I didn't like it. Eventually I moved on and I went back to graduate school a little bit later in life as well. And I got a business degree undergraduate, went back and got an engineering degree, and that's what I do now. But the big turning point for me was I realized in graduate school, for one thing, I chose to do something I was actually interested in, which got me more engaged. And I realized that I enjoyed speaking out in classes. I enjoyed doing the work. And I had a turning point in my first job after that, where someone I was working with quit or got another job and left. And I got a project dropped in my lap to handle, and which required calling a lot of people. And I just kind of had a conversation with myself of like, I can't avoid this. I need to just start doing it and kind of quit caring about what my speech sounds like. And sort of a slow snowballing started from there. And from a fluency perspective, I got better, you could say, but I think it's more of I wasn't quit worrying about it as much. And I still, stutter every day. I still have trouble with my phone number and saying my name and my address and all those things. But that kind of led me to where I am today. I've moved up to Greenville for a job opportunity and have changed careers a couple times or changed jobs a couple times. And there have been steps along the way where I've been working on something at the last job I had, and just came up in a meeting that we had to present this, and someone said, well, you've been doing it. Do you want to do the presentation? And in moments like that, saying, yes, I'll do it, even though I really didn't want to. And then it gets more and more comfortable, sort of. It's still not totally comfortable, but and as far as covertness, through all that, I never acknowledged to anyone that I stuttered. Every now and then someone would acknowledge it back to me, until the current job I have told people and talked about with people, and it's made the experience much better than anyone before. But I never knew what covert stuttering was till the past year or so. So it's been interesting to hear everyone's stories as I've gone to things like this. I'm thankful to the NSA, my personal history with the NSA. I went to some of local chapter meetings in Birmingham many years ago before I moved to South Carolina, and kind of like, I think it was Elaine that said it's sort of a mirror feeling, the first ones of those you go to, and I definitely felt that, and took a while to get comfortable. I didn't connect with the group here till the past couple of years, but having really enjoyed and gotten a lot out of participating there. I'm actually thankful that the conference, the greater NSA conference, got shut down last year because it allowed me to participate in the virtual thing, which I probably wouldn't have attended the real conference. And through that, hearing the stories of everybody on here has been really insightful to me, really helpful. But when I think about what being a covert stutterer means to me, and trying to get out of the mindset of hiding it and accepting it, being okay with it. It's to me, it's even less about advertising my speech issues to other people. It's almost more about giving myself permission to say things the way I say them, in a presentation or anything else. And the other thing that I'm trying to work on, last thing I'll say, is challenging myself to try not to swap words and stuff and say what I actually want to say when it comes up, and that's still a challenge for me. But I think that's the end of my story. I appreciate everyone listening, and thanks to Cathy for having me.
Thank you so much, Will. And many of us have done these type of workshops before, so I'm glad this was your first, and I hope there's many to come as well, because you definitely have a very inspiring story. All of us do. So I've been taking notes in the chat, and I've done these workshops many times. So I'm going to ask all of you as a panel to answer these, as you see fit, because this is what is on most everyone's mind who's also someone who has hidden or is currently hiding their stuttering. So I want each of you to think about and answer, what made you decide to hide your stuttering exactly? Is there one thing or one day that just you said, I'm done? And I know some of you may have already shared that. And if that's the case, do you ever wonder if you ignored that voice and said, no, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to just allow my disfluency out there. Do you wonder if you'd be the same as the same person you are now? Or is there something you wish you would done to not go in the direction of hiding? So let's begin with Will. So we'll go in the reverse order. Will, would you like to share?
I think, for me, I think what caused me to hide it or not be open about it was kind of the fact that it was just never an open topic of conversation. No one ever asked. I think back, when I was in junior high and high school, our school had a thing where every year there was a poetry contest where everyone in their English class had to memorize and recite a poem. And the people who did the best, there was a little contest and stuff. But I was terrible every year. I got up and did it, but I barely got through it every time. And I did this for 6 or 7 years straight, and not once did the teacher talk to me or say good job or thanks for doing it. Nothing. And I think things like that just sort of ingrain in you, and the fact that I never knew anyone who stuttered, I would never was encouraged to meet anyone, and so it was just my thing, and so that was it. I just kept it to myself.
Anyone else? Bobby, Lane? Bob, you're on mute.
It doesn't matter what I say anyhow. Go ahead, Elaine.
Okay, Bob. Yeah, I don't really have a specific time when I decided to be covert. I do remember more specifically when I decided to do something about it, but I think my parents not talking about it, it just was covert in my house, right? That's all I knew. So I didn't know any better to think I could talk about it. So yeah, I don't really have a time that some big thing that happened that made me realize, oh shoot, I better not stutter anymore. So yeah, I don't have a a moment like that. But to answer your question about would I be a different person, I mean, I appreciate who I am now, and my journey got me here. So, I mean, there was definitely pain and fear and shame and vulnerability. But yeah, I appreciate my journey. So
Awesome. And Elaine, what you're sharing in the chat, we've had several questions on your SLP role. So how can we gain the word? How can SLPs gain the correct words to talk about it with the elementary school age kids, or even as an adult, so you can convey how they can best be helped in the work they need to do? And how do you reach a dual of improving fluency, not seeing it as a goal and honing in more on reducing the struggle as opposed to influence fluency? So what is your advice on that?
That's a long question.
it is.
It is very long. So what is?
And I've been reading the chats a little bit, so I kind of know where you're going. But yeah, I mean, there's not an easy answer, and people have come up with some really good answers. But I'd have to say again, I saw Dr. Bird yesterday talking in the NSA conference about talking about stuttering with kids, with young kids, with little kids, and saying the word stutter. Like when I was growing up, like, don't talk about it, don't say the word stutter. And that Wendell Johnson theory is still looms around those speech pathologists because everyone's afraid to say it. And so she did a whole hour on talking about it, even with little ones. It's given me some ideas of what to do with a few of my littles, but my little ones. So that would, I know that question came up about how do I work with a young child who's covert, and I think talking about it. And it's not like, you know, you stutter, this is what you do, but let's just talk about stuttering and then see other kids who stutter. And then, you know, what do we do when we stutter? What does stuttering look like? So yeah, just talking about stuttering, not at first about them, of course, but I think that's a great way to start that approach. The other thing people were talking about, and they had great answers, I think, if we're not teaching fluency, which is what I had said, if my goal is fluency, then I'm going to be covert. So how do we change that? And I think people were saying it great about reducing the struggles and the tension. And I think for me, how I look at it too is awareness of what I'm doing. I can't just teach you fluency techniques. I have to, it's important for you to see what you're doing. Like, what are you doing now? What are the secondaries? What is the struggle? What is the tension? What is the actual stuttering? What does that look like? And desensitization of my own, or your own, whatever, I'll talk about me, but whatever, my own, or your own stutter, of the client's own stutter, and that desensitization and learning what they're doing and then gaining control. And I think that those fluency shaping techniques can just help you gain control. So that's what people are saying. I still kind of, that's, some people still work on some of those techniques of easing in or different things. But for me, I look at those as just gaining control. If I want to be able to say something, if I look ahead, I know I'm going to stutter on my name, I could ease in, I could stutter on it. I have choices. And I think giving people who stutter choices of how they manage their own speech. So I don't see anything wrong. I mean, there is a place for teaching techniques. I just don't think that teaching them for fluency is the answer, because then they'll just use them to be covert, right? So yeah, anyway, that's my answer. Thank
you, Elaine. So what would all of you for someone who's struggling with hiding their stuttering now, what steps would you suggest that they take if they are at the point where they're ready, they have to make a change? What are the baby steps that helped you become a little bit more open? I know it's not just easy saying, well, just tell everyone. That doesn't work, or just allow it out. So what things, maybe as you look back to your younger self, what little things would you begin doing a little bit at a time to feel like more accepting of your speech? Bob, do you want to chime in here?
Yes, I do. Pay attention to everything in your life. There are a whole lot of other things I'm hiding too. It isn't only stuttering. So what makes stuttering so much more important in my life other than everything else that I'm afraid of, everything else that I'm hiding? There's a whole lot of things going on in my life. And as I go through my journey, I'm finding that, well, why is this, my fluency, more important than anything else? And I find that very curious. Why do I focus in on this when I have this other thing going on? As I go through my journey, I'm finding confidences in other things I do. And this helps me along my way. And I truly believe that these other confidences is what's allowing fluency in my life. And I'm at a point where, I think for me anyhow, stuttering was way overrated. I paid way too much attention to it. There's a lot of other things that I'm trying to do, that I'm trying to focus in on, but the confidences I get from other things I do is helping me realize that I have a lot of things going on. It isn't only my speech. I have a lot of things I'm doing with my life and a lot of things I'm meant to be here for. I'm not here by accident. I have a purpose in life, and I need to focus in on that. So going forward is like, just give myself a break. I'm a whole person. I'm not just a little tiny person that the only thing I have going on in my life is my inability to be fluent. I think it's way overrated. Fluency is way, way overrated. I'm pretty good at playing solitaire. Do you know that? Yes, I am. That's my answer.
Awesome, Bob. Will or Elaine, would you like to answer before we get to the audience questions?
I would, but Will, do you want to before I go? All right.
Go for it.
Are you saying go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Will. Those baby steps, those first steps, they have to want it. And so you're saying that they want it, right? So somebody is saying, I can't do this anymore. So tired of being a covert. What do I do? So having that motivation is that first step. And that's a huge step in itself. So acknowledging that. And also I think acknowledging all these things of the disclosing or talking to other people, which is disclosing, but talking to other people about stuttering and acceptance. It's all a process and it's all really, really hard. It's easy to do some research on that. And I love that research. It gives, it gives data, and I love data, but it's hard. The work is really hard. And so really thinking about those first baby steps. So yeah, acknowledging that you're ready. And I think yeah, talking about stuttering, giving those tools. How do you talk about stuttering? Seeing other people who stutter. I mean, I kind of already said this with little kids who's, you know, working with young coverts who are ready, and it's the same thing. Yeah, it is small baby steps. And if somebody is really ready, then I love that. When someone's really ready to kind of be more open and do all the work, I love that. So that's a quick answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Elaine. Ken, I notice you have your hand raised. Feel free.
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you very much, Kathy. Yeah, so I don't know how many people know me. I'm trying to look out. I'm not sure I know a whole lot of people here, but I'm a person who stutters. I'm also a speech pathologist. I work a lot with people who stutter, and I consider myself covert. I've talked about being covert my whole life. I have a lot of what I would call residual fluency, and I look upon that over all the years as perhaps a bad thing because I haven't come out with my stuttering. I always advocate my clients, try to come out with the stuttering. And that's why, you talk about strategies to increase fluency, and I went to Courtney's discussions yesterday, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think disclosing is great, but I also think bringing it out. And there's another kind of therapy called stuttering modification therapy, where you actually, fake stuttering, and it's not fluency shaping. It's about feeling better about being a person who stutters. And so I know I don't want to advocate any particular kind of therapy, but there's more out there than just reducing stuttering. And honestly, I really think that trying to reduce the stuttering does lead to more covertness, and bringing it out would bring more overtness. So I just wanted to add that. So thank you very much, Cathy, again for this.
Thank you, Ken. Is there anyone else who would like to ask? Raise their hand, and we can go on unmute. Anyone?
I'm
Hi, Lucy.
Hi. I'm someone who stutters, and I'm an SLP, and so I grew up as a kid. I was a severe stutterer, and then I guess around the 5th grade or so, my stuttering became really easy, and I think I figured out how to be covert. I still stuttered at home, but in school, my friends, and like all through high school, my friends knew I stuttered, but like it wasn't a big deal. I was able to hide it, like from my teachers, and in high school, I had a babysitting business. I could make phone calls. It was like, yeah, I stuttered, but I never realized this is what it was, but I think I figured out how to hide it. I became covert. I hid it when I could. I guess I was covert. I never knew that this existed. And then in my senior year of high school, I got mono, and the stuttering came back like severely. I was not able to hide it anymore, and like everything changed. And then that haunted me into adulthood. So I did I got married young. I chose a career where I wouldn't have to talk, and so my speech, like I could hide it when I hid it when I could. When I couldn't, I stuttered. I think I mainly lived trying to hide it. I worked for the same person for 25 years, stuttered every day. We were very close. We were like sisters. We never one time talked about stuttering ever. My oldest boy stuttered. We talked about our kids every day. I never told her that he stuttered. So, and so now, I'm in SLP the approach I take with my clients is, anti-avoidance, open stuttering, and at the same time, I catch myself at times using strategies myself to speak smoothly. So it's this constant inner battle with myself. I tried to stutter openly with my clients, and when I find myself not doing that, when I find myself trying to use fluency shaping strategies when I'm talking with them, then or in other situations, I feel like a fraud. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm telling them to do something I'm not doing. It's this constant, and just like Ken was just saying, I think this is what Ken was saying, it's like a constant battle. What do I do? Like, I tell them to do something, I encourage them to do one thing, and then I'm not doing it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think other SLPs can resonate with that. Like, going between covert and open, it's not such a cut and dry thing.
It is not at all, Lucy. Thank you so much for sharing that. Annabelle.
Good afternoon, guys. So I kind of wanted to know from the speech pathologists who do stutter. So for the job interviews, did you self disclose that you stuttered? Because I kind of want to be a speech pathologist, but I feel like I would need a good amount of fluency to kind of be one. So I just kind of wanted to know your thoughts and things about it.
Annabelle, you are uniquely equipped to be a speech pathologist, whether you stutter or not, no matter what your degree of fluency is. You understand people with speech difficulties more than anyone because you have experienced it. So, you need to learn to be confident in your abilities, and the fact that you are someone who stutters makes no difference, and you need to learn how to advocate for yourself. And if you need help, I can help you. And yes, definitely disclose. Say, I'm someone who stutters, and because of that, I feel that I have learned how to navigate life and can face challenges better than other people. And I am more in tune with clients with speech challenges because of that. And your stuttering will not get in the way. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
Yes, and just quickly, thanks, Lucy, for sharing that. And thank you, Annabelle, for asking that and really putting yourself out there right now. Yeah, go for it. I think it's great. And I do disclose, and I've had some pushback every now and then. I think a lot of SLPs who stutter have. So, and there is a Facebook group for SLPs who stutter. If you're interested in like just learning more, there is more information out there. But yeah, no, I often say, I know exactly what it's like to live with a communication disorder every day. I know exactly what it's like. And people who don't have communication disorders can be great speech pathologists. I certainly am not downplaying that, but I understand it. And so I usually bring it up as a strength when they ask me about strengths and concerns. One of my strengths is that I always try to put it in a positive light.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Steph.
Hey, yeah, I have a question for the panel. So I teach the graduate course for stuttering and cluttering at Baylor, and I'm just wondering, there's a lot of change going on in the SLP world, and we're really, really trying hard. How do I say this? We're really trying hard to educate more SLPs to make the quality of SLPs and the quantity of SLPs that get it and know stuttering therapy and understand stuttering therapy in a positive way. And those of us that do understand it well are really working hard to educate those that don't, and increase that as much as we can. So for the panel, as a professor that teaches this, regarding covert stuttering specifically, what is one thing that you would want a graduate student who's about to graduate and do this for a living? What's one thing you would want them to know about speech therapy?
I'll say something. For me and with my kids who are still very young, I haven't experienced a lot of speech therapists, but I can already tell there's some that understand it better than others. But I mean, especially as people get older, as kids get older, I think what's important is the individual's, relationship to their speech. And that's what is more important than fluency or what's coming out, that they're paying attention to how the person feels, and that, encouraging their confidence to communicate when they want to, and less so about what it sounds like.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful.
Thank you, Steph. And I just want to let everyone know we have a hard stop at 3:55. So we got 4 minutes left. But before I get to the next question in the chat, I'm not sure if you guys saw, but we do have a Facebook group for Covert Stuttering. I put the link in the chat, or you can search on Facebook Covert Stuttering Support Group, and it's private. So I just wanted to get that out there. But before we go to Lord's.
Hi, did you call me? Hi. Yes, thank you so much to the panel for the really wonderful presentations. And I am a speech therapist, and I am a person who stutters. I have it in my family. I have been able to adopt a lot of strategies as a speech and language pathologist, but it was a huge challenge for me to speaking was always challenging for me and very uncomfortable many times. But I'm very, very happy to see this panel presenting so many different options in the treatment of stuttering. and in your journey, where it's not just one approach or one way of thinking, but I really appreciate it as a speech therapist, where I work with students, to see that we are not fixated in one approach and one way of doing things, but we have a broad view, and we look at each client individually. And specifically, when, Will, you're talking about confidence is an important aspect, and that has been part of my training, to teach confidence to the students about themselves, and to be appreciative of who they are, other than the stuttering is just one piece, the speaking is one piece. But I'm really grateful for your presentation, and I just wanted to say that I know we don't have enough time, but
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we have time for one quick one. Daniel, sorry.
Okay. I am wondering, a lot of my life I have avoided a lot. How do we forgive ourselves for all of the opportunities that we have avoided, and how can we move forward? That's my question.
Well, yeah, thanks for asking that, Daniel. Just real quick, all of these workshops are being recorded and available, and I watched the research one this morning, and they're doing one on self-compassion. And I think self-compassion is a huge thing, and there's research on it about mindfulness and all kinds of things that has shown through research to be very helpful. And when you were talking, that's what I was thinking about.
I was just going to say real quickly, Will, Daniel, move into the future. You may find forgiveness, you may not find forgiveness, but don't let that be a reason why you can't move into the future. I've not forgiven myself for many, many things, but that's not going to stop me.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we hope to see all of you soon at the NSA event.
Thank you, Cathy.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Elaine, Bob, and Will.